here with Michael Drew. Michael is a seasoned speaker who has addressed over 50,000 people across the U.S. and Canada and is now the founder of realestatedoneforyou.com, a turnkey real estate investment company specializing in single-family homes. Their team handles everything from buying and rehabbing to property management, helping clients build passive income streams and retire on rent. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Michael.
Eric, thanks for having me, my man.
All right. Well, no, I'm excited. You told me that you have some stand-up or some improv background. No, we're looking forward to the interview and chatting a little bit more with you in regards to turnkey investments. And so that's a really unique strategy within real estate. And I want to see exactly how you guys are navigating these choppy waters within our economy with that specific niche within real estate. And so we'll have those discussions. But before we get to that, if you could share just a little bit more about yourself and also how you got started in real estate, that'd be great.
Sure. Well, I kind of stumbled upon real estate because my background is actually trading the stock market. I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area. My mentor was one of the market makers in Qualcomm, which I'm going to date myself there. It's a little bit older company. And when I started learning about that, I learned about some of the boutique strategies, option selling strategies, covered call strategies, spread strategies. And those were all great. In fact, I helped audiences learn about that quite a bit and really enjoyed it. But the problem there is after I had a couple kids and I realized that one of the old adages, they say, rich people have money and wealthy people have time. Okay. So I was trying to impress my buddies with what I made that day or on a percentage basis. Oh, I only invested this. I made this. But how much money did I make when I didn't work? I mean, it's, trading just really became another job. And I'm like, that's not what I want to do, and then, it was a profitable experience. It was I was platinum on Delta, gold on American, traveled the country. That was my kind of W-2, years and years and years. I try to get there to try to make church or a soccer game or something like that. But I don't want to say absentee father, but maybe if you were to ask my wife at the time, she wasn't impressed with how much I worked maybe. And then what happened, I was a younger guy and, my dad was diagnosed with melanoma in November and he died in January 2nd. And that was 21 years ago. And so I was the more financially oriented child, it was me and my sister and I. And I remember what the words I said. My dad was heading into chemo, and I said, "I will take care of mom." And I didn't know what that meant as a 31-year-old. You're really not that smart anyway. It's 31, right? And it just seemed like something you should say, when you're a young man, and so when I reviewed her, my mom's money, there wasn't a ton of it. We tried to do some covered calls, a very conservative strategy, and she just didn't want to lose any money. And sometimes you lose money in the stock market. It's just sometimes the stocks go down, even the good companies, right? And I said, this is too risky. If I screw this up, she's going to, live in the basement or something. This is not good. And so what I did is we rolled that over to what's called a self-directed IRA. So, of course, my dad's 401k then became my mom's inherited IRA, right? And what we did is we actually bought houses in the name of the IRA and essentially helped replace my dad's income with the money from rent. That's it. Not very difficult, just a little paperwork. So if you added up some of the other investments she had and the rent, we essentially retired my mom on rent. And I remember I told that story in California once, and someone raised their hand and they said, "Can I be your mom?" And I said, we might have a business here. So that was about 15 years ago. And since then, we have bought, rehabbed, sold, and now manage just over 1,100 houses in the Midwest. And it's worked out real well. We've retired plenty of people. We've helped people, whether they want to truly retire on rent or they just are structuring, hey, I want to make X when I retire, whatever that number is, right? 25 grand a month or whatever your number is. But I want 10 grand or 15 grand coming from rent, and whatever else coming from whatever else you have, your syndications, your this, your that, your 401k, whatever else you have. I'm in charge. I help people do that where they actually own the deeds. A lot of my clients enjoy owning deeds themselves so they can do with it whatever they wish, whenever they want. There's a lot of dexterity when you actually own the deed. So that was my background and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, well, it does sound like it worked out really well, and hats off to you for taking care of your mom like that. I'm a huge family guy as well, and I also struggle with not being around as much as I should with the kids. The good thing is I was there earlier in life, but now they're in their teens, and it's somewhat me taking advantage of them not being excited to be with dad. But you got to work in order to get things off the ground. So, but yeah, definitely hats off to you for taking care of mom like you did. And so, with these properties and these investors that invested in these turnkey deals, they're owning 100% equity. Are you finding that groups of people are wanting to get together, or is it more or less single individuals coming in and buying property one offs, or are they buying a couple at a time?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of times what I get is that when you really do the research on rentals, it's kind of like I do a lot of sports analogy because they're easy to understand. You can't win a game only playing defense, right? You got to score sometime, whether it's football or pickleball, whatever it is. You can't always play defense. So you're like, well, I lived in Chicago for a while, but property taxes are nasty, right? And then I've got friends in California, but it's a very, very tenant friendly state. Well, that's not ideal. I mean, great weather, though. Don't get me wrong, right? I have friends in Vegas. I have friends in Texas. I have friends in Florida. Okay. Well, those are all, there's no state tax, right? Well, that means there's spicy property tax, right? Or, my friends in Florida doing Airbnbs in Florida, they're just getting crushed with insurance right now. So if you add this all up and you treat it like a true business, okay, and you're like, I don't want to invest where I grew up. I want to invest where it makes sense. Okay, what's the highest bang for my buck? It'll, if you're looking for cash flow, that's really where I found Indianapolis. As I did the research, I find that investors will say, hey, you know what? Sure, I want a, six-figure residual income. And to answer your question, Eric, is I'm going to start with one or two and see how it works, right? My top investor has 88 houses and my newest investor has one, right? So he comes on in and says, all right, my homes in the Midwest are about 150 to 200 grand, right? Let's use 150 for a round number. Don't want to talk too fast, but you said your audiences are pretty savvy. So 20% down on 150 grand, right? 30 grand down plus closing costs. And the homes are already rehabbed and they're already rented. And so my tenant's going to pay off the balance of that mortgage, right? While we raise rents, your payment's going to stay the same. Appreciation's around, 4, 5, 6%. And before you know it, like my sister who bought two homes, you've got a ton of equity and you've never even seen the home. And people basically say, wow, this worked out real well. Let me rinse and repeat. I don't want to go on another vacation. I want some more of these doors. So what ends up happening in 5, 6 years, people end up saying, I own these 8 houses that I've never seen before. And I've got equity that I'm proud of, worked well. And there will be, I don't say, challenges. There will be maintenance, just like on your new, you got to change the oil and put on new tires, right? You got to put in some water heaters every now and again or unclog a drain, right? It's real estate. But if you maintain all those and manage those and you do a good job on your rehab, we've got very, very happy investors. So they start small and they diversify with our homes. Our homes, like I said, are in Indianapolis and they're delighted with the returns.
Yeah, Indianapolis, from what I understand, is a great market to buy within the Midwest. As a matter of fact, I was looking into it at one point, but it was a lot of competition in the market, especially for the multifamily arena. There was tons of guys that was already there and they was established. And so I decided to stick a little bit closer to home here in KC, but that's it still is an amazing market. And to go back to some of your track record, so you've closed on over 1,100 homes, and you have achieved a really high level of success. So, if we could go back to the early beginnings, you mentioned that you were taking care of mom, and you were determined to make sure that you helped her get things turned around and take care of where your dad left off. So, did you have a job during these early years when you began to build this portfolio out? And what did it look like for you in the beginning, getting your business off the ground?
Sure, that's great. I think you always have to, it's kind of like, let me taste the food and then you can taste it, So I have financial planners that refer to me. I have, a lot of clients refer to me. So I went ahead and back in the day, now I'm going to date myself, but 15 years ago when you were buying non-owner occupied real estate, all you needed to put down is 10%, by the way. Okay. Right. This is pre Lehman Brothers. Right. So you could buy $100,000 house for 10 grand, basically, plus some closing costs. So that's what I was doing. So I was working full time, 60 hours a week, doing my thing. And I'm like, well, these houses, and they were, of course, a lot cheaper back then. Right. So I'm buying these houses for 10% down plus closing costs. And it was real easy. And, so I did that for a while. And then what happened is once I got up to a certain number is it became, I actually did it with one of my business partners, current business partner, who is a UPS executive. And I am big into copying success. Huge. I go to seminars. I go to pickleball coaching stuff. I want to be a good husband. So I go to marriage seminars. I read books on this stuff. I take care of my body. I work out, 3-4 times a week. You got to do that. So I went to this guy who was a UPS executive, and he said, well, once you go to about 20 houses, you got to have a management company, so we had a management company. And I said, all this makes sense if someone else manages it, because remember, if rich people have money and wealthy people have time, I don't want to put in the time. I want to enjoy the fruits of it. Eric, if you and I chip in 100 grand each, and we go buy a Subway franchise, we better not be making sandwiches. We better be getting some direct deposits, right? We hire a manager to make sandwiches, right? So we don't manage our own properties. That's not the point of real estate, right? The point is passive income, is mailbox money. So when I got started, I said, all this makes sense if it can afford the management, things like that. So we grew as a management company, and then I grew, and then all of a sudden I said, wait a second here. And then I started making mistakes. Do I want to go D class, C class, B class, A class, right? In our city, is one of the things in our city, what you don't really put on a spreadsheet that makes sense is the turn costs that are associated with anything, with multifamily or with single family. In our city is that someone who has a normal job can live in a house. Okay. Someone who's the general manager at Taco Bell, not your ideal client for a renter in my world, is they're going to stay for 1 year and they're going to bounce. They're not going to pay you last month's rent, and they're going to trash the place. That's not how I want to grow a portfolio. So I moved in my city to single families because our tenants are staying for 3 and 4 years. So we're avoiding those turn costs, which if you don't have a line item on your spreadsheet, that can come around and bite you if you're not careful. So I wanted to go in that single family. Also, the appreciation on single family is much, much better because there's more elasticity on renting. So again, to answer your question, we started a little bit slow, and then we started gaining momentum, and I just copied success. And then after we left the stock market world, is I went to go ahead and work for Rich Dad Poor Dad. I said, this Robert Kiyosaki guy, I mean, it's not a brilliant book, but it was easy to consume his seminars and his books, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad. And he says, hey, listen, you've got to go in cities that are landlord friendly. That are friendly to us. I said, well, that makes sense. Why would I not do that? Right. And he gave me that checklist. It's number 1, landlord friendly. Number 2, low property tax. Number 3, low interest rates. Number 4, it has to be diverse economics. So like Detroit's a cool city, but when the automotive industry is, in a lull or some sort of recession, it affects everything else. Right. So diverse economics. Right. And lastly, a bonus is that either the county seat, which would be the capital of the state, or at least universities nearby, which are arguably a microeconomy, a university. When recessions hit, people go back to school, right? They live with mom and dad, they go back to school. So all of this, there was very few that checked all those boxes. And that's where I kind of found Indianapolis. Robert Kiyosaki liked it, kind of copied his success. And that's where I bought my first nine houses, and it worked out well.
Yeah, so education is always going to be the key. You want to start off by learning the process and following credible people. And Robert Kiyosaki, he is amazing. That guy is, he was ahead of the curve. And I loved his book, looking at the two differences between the working dad and the dad that was entrepreneurial, and being able to see where both of those guys ended up, and also the mentality of both. It was a game changer for me as well. So, Michael, thanks for sharing that, and sharing that you started off with looking at a partner. You found a person that was having success. You modeled his success. And then on top of that, you began to start small and you build up from there. And that's what led you to the achievement in which you've attained as of today. If we can move a little bit further into the show, how are you navigating your business in today's market? So you operate a turnkey real estate investment company. How has the higher interest rates affected you? And what are you guys doing to keep the business moving forward as of today?
You got it. Great question. Well, I don't say it hasn't affected us because, of course, higher interest rates are meant to like slow down the economy, right? Post coronavirus, right? So the bottom line, though, is this: is that everyone, of course, always needs a place to live, right? And rents have gone up quite well. Okay, wages have gone up and rents have gone up. So a perfect example is. I copied from another a friend of mine, a very successful property manager. He says, always make your properties a little bit better than the next. Now, I'm not saying you need to put in, hot tubs or something like that or whatever. In my market, you don't need to, but our properties are clean. We get it, we probably get 10 to 20 applicants per property, so we can choose from these people and the prices are going up. And then if it all makes sense, we begin with the end in mind. And the end in mind is selfishly is to retire and rent ourselves, right? So we have very low overhead. After the pandemic, we went to straight virtual as far as our property management company. Our staff was happy working from home. That's great. All of our tenants have smartphones anyway, right? So we gave up the 4,000 or 5,000 square foot office space. Don't need it anymore, right? And we just ran lean and mean. And when interest rates are a little bit higher, I do my investors as many favors as I can as far as pricing and things like that are concerned. Or if they buy multiple or they're doing a 1031 exchange, I can work with them as best as possible. But when they pick up a home or they pick up a 3-pack, or let's just say they do a DCSR loan, a no doc loan, they pick up one of my packages. They don't even need to have a job. They can just pick them up and my homes will finance themselves. It's a no-doc loan because they're all leased, right? Is I make sure I'm beginning with the investor in mind. It kind of reminds me of this. I do enjoy dining with my wife. We have a little place in Miami, and we went out to a nice place, and the doneness of the meal wasn't what I think she wanted. And she was like, "Oh, it's fine, honey. It's fine." She's like shoving her meat around. I go, "Honey, the guy who's walking around takes pride in what he does." And I wasn't trying to be a jerk about it, but I'm saying, "Hey, this is just not her favorite." And he looked at it and he goes, "Sir, this is what I can't remember the doneness for, medium well, whatever it was." He's like, "Do you want me to refire another one? What do you want me to do?" And I said, "You know what? Honestly, she just loves this." And, it was just when things aren't right, you just take care of people. He didn't have malicious intent. He didn't have his staff under or overcook something. If things go sideways, you just take care of people. That's all it is. Call me. I answer my phone. It's old school, but it works, man. So you just take care of people, just like the maitre d' in the restaurant or someone who's invested, a few dollars and they bought some real estate. Most of my investors don't even see the houses, so they take us. Of course, they're appraised and they're inspected and everything like that. But we're all interested in the same thing, right? Showing up there for our families, showing up there, making sure that we have a, hard now, easy later, right? That's what we believe. And let's be accused of that by our investment decisions we make and the people we partner up with. And that's the partner I want to be in town, is the one that answers his phone and gets you taken care of. Because it's paying off for my business, and we've got some happy customers and clients.
Yeah, so it sounds like in order to make this work, what you're doing, you've got a property management company, you have a construction company, and you also mentioned that you purchase the houses up front and then you resell the homes on the back end. If you can shine some light on how does that work, and you're also buying from wholesalers, give us a few details as to what does that look like and how are you pulling all of these things off?
And that's the tough part. Okay. Because if you're shopping on the MLS for deals, they've already been picked through 16 times by people like me. Right. So by the time it makes the MLS, it's not that good of a deal. Also, I got to tell you is that some of these wholesalers, I know they mean well. And I have friends who are in this business, they're paying 10, 20 grand a month on leads and they're giving them to their investors and this and that, whatever, or more. You really got to back into this and see if it makes sense for you. Because I've overpaid for plenty of things. And when you get down to it, it's difficult. So remember, you make money when you buy. Everybody knows that, right? So we're lucky enough that we've got 7 different acquisition sources. Only one of them is wholesalers. Of course, you can't replace the over $100 million of business that we've done over 15 years, so I can afford, since I buy them inexpensively, I can go ahead and afford and put in that new roof, put in that flooring, put in new HVAC, put in new plumbing, electric, bathrooms, kitchens, the whole 9 yards, because I buy it inexpensively enough. So for someone to copy what I've done, you just have to make a lot of mistakes, which I've already made. That's why I think the turnkey model works, right? If you're going to go ahead and start that and do it on your own, it's just going to take you a minute. So we have those acquisition sources. We've got from lawyers to probate to tax liens to tax sales to auctions to foreclosure auctions to realtors. I mean, I'm all dialed in with my CRM. So if I ever need a property, I get an email blast out to people and I can review 20 or 30 properties. All the properties I buy have to be 100% cash. I never am buying with hard money right now because people want to close in a week or in 10 days. Or if you see my offer, I can't afford to put in the $40,000, $50,000 of rehab and make any money on it if I pay top dollar. So I try to be easy to work with, but close for cash, close immediately, and go from there. So those are some things that I do. It is difficult to acquire, and more difficult. That's why, like I said, that's why I go with someone who's done it like myself, or someone who's been in the city for a long time. For you to do this on a part-time basis, it is hard, and that's where the inefficiencies will come up and creep. If you have to look up in the phone book to do something, you don't know who can do a job, that's bad, right? Whether it's snaking a drain or putting helical anchors in a basement wall or whatever it may be, you've got to have that database, and that's what we have.
And so are you raising any capital at any point with this, or are you doing this 100% self-funded?
We're that classic entrepreneur, right? When we needed money, not a soul would talk to us, right? You're like, no, you borrowed money from me at poker, man. You never paid me $20, or something like that, right? And now that we don't need money, people are like, do you need money? I'm like, do you need anything? And I'm like, no, not at your interest rates. I mean, so not a ton. We don't really pay a whole lot of hard money right now because we've been doing it so long, right? We also, though, I will say this, I do enjoy working with people in their self-directed IRAs. Also, do the math on this, but you can also turn your self-directed IRA into a Roth IRA, right? And acquire homes straight, directly in a Roth. So we deal with people and we train people and teach people a little bit about that. I don't charge for that. It's paperwork. It's not very difficult, right? And so, no, we don't really raise a whole lot of capital, but I gotta say is that whole parenting thing was crucial for me. Okay, there's guys that are bigger and better, the Elon Musks of the world. I sell PayPal or whatever and buy another $1 billion company or create $1 billion. They're better than me. I didn't really want to miss a whole lot of lacrosse games and soccer games. So I said, how good can I get? And here's what a friend said to me. He said, this is a good litmus test. Do your kids want to hang out with you when you're older? And now that I've got kids that are, what are they, 21, 23, 24, and 25, it's cool now. Now that I showed up the whole time, and I my boy was easy because he's like me, likes to play sports and catch and whatever. My daughter, man, I struggled with. It was just, she wasn't as easy, man. She didn't like to hang out with me, and so I finally figured that out, and I take her on dates and that, I gave up a few $100,000 while they were being raised, but now that they're a little bit older, it worked out. And by the way, the two of them actually own their own rentals, and they're 21, 23, and it's like kind of cool. So, make as much as you can, but if you're worth 5 million or 10 million, your kids I don't really care when you're dead, to spend time with them. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the things that you're going to be able to cherish and also be proud of as well. And so I always try to take some of what Jeff Bezos said. He said he tries to make decisions based off of as if he's on his deathbed. He wants to be able to look back and be proud of the things that he did while he was alive. And so that's really that's a great mentality to have. Your today decisions, just looking at it in the future sense as if you are on your deathbed, and make sure that you're going to be okay with what it is that you're doing as of today. And so now I do have one final question on this. And so we know that you're using various resources to be able to locate these properties. You have the construction company, you manage the properties yourself. How are you locating these buyers? Is there any method to that, or how do you guys operate it?
I do podcasts with a guy named Eric Lindsay. That's what I do. He's a very good looking man. You know, um, right? So here's what we do: is probably 50% of my business is repeat or referral business. Okay, we give referral bonuses to our existing investors. Things like that. Also, is previously in a previous lifetime, I was a professional speaker in multiple states and in a little bit in Canada. I've been to Singapore and United Kingdom doing those things, but I really enjoy the stage, right? And then from there is really just doing a great job. Right. It's, when someone says they buy a house for, $600,000 in California, it just seems crazy to me because the rent can't keep up with it. I'm obviously buying my houses for a lot less, given my investors, and the rent is significant. Like I said, they're positive cash flow on 30-year mortgages or even on 15-year mortgages. So really what I do is do a great job. Yes, we do a little bit of, we don't really do advertising, hang out with folks like yourself, or we do, I'm in a lot of investors in California where the market's very, very expensive. We'll out there, go out and speak at some real estate investor conferences there. We'll do some 1031 exchange type conferences or self-directed IRA type conferences, because those are really enjoyable, but like-minded individuals, So as I say, is how you do anything is how you do everything. That was an old T. Harv Eker thing. And even though you said, make decisions based on your deathbed, sometimes that's hard for people. What I always say is have someone have an ideal version of you 5 years from now, advise you what to do. That's it. Should you be, that's it. Because, I don't know how long I'm going to live. Right. And would they say, hey, be nicer to your wife, probably, right? Be nicer to kids. Yeah. Do this, clean out your garage, watch less TV, things like whatever it may be for you, right? Or is what I do is I make sure people know that I build leadership in my company. So I'm not blowing up my phone all the time. I build leaders. Maybe I make a little bit less, but I have a better life, So that's kind of what I'm working on.
Yeah, it goes back to that time equation because time is wealth. Wealth can be described in so many different ways, and it's not always attached to monetary gains. And so I think that's a great perspective to have as you move throughout life. So, Michael, we're going to turn the page. We've got a portion of the show that we like to call our Moonlight Coaching Round. And typically what we do is ask our guests about 4 questions. If you could hold your response between 1 or 2 minutes per question, that'd be great.
Hold my response for 1 or 2. So limit my response to 1 or 2 minutes.
Exactly. Okay. Hey, first question I have for you is, what do you think every new real estate investor should know about investing in real estate?
What should every new real estate investor know about investing? And I would say the math. Sometimes it's enjoyable to do something. And if you ever watch Shark Tank, they'll be like, oh, so you've got a very nice hobby. You don't have a business yet. You have a hobby. Okay. So just be clear with the numbers. Is this a hobby or is this a business? If you go, if you go to your partner or your wife or whatever and say, hey, this is what I'm doing on the weekends. Okay. That's golf. You're not making money from it. I'm flipping a house. It's a hobby, or I'm really in this to make money. And here's my spreadsheet. Here's my mentor. Here's what I'm doing. Here's my after repaired value. Or I'm going to be like, hey, I'm slammed. I got 100 people, 500 people reporting to me. I'm taking one off the shelf with Michael Drew. And this is what we're going to make. So just be clear and be honest. As you grow up and older, be honest. They do a blood panel on you. Be honest with the results. I had to take some more vitamin D, right? Okay, whatever. It is what it is. Okay, be honest with the math, know the math, and be conservative on the math. And you know what? People kind of respect. I think people respect you either win or you learn, right? Mistakes that I've made, I'm glad I made them. They weren't fun, but I'm glad I made them.
Yeah. Okay, great answer on that. The next question I have is, knowing what you know now, what kind of advice would you give a person attempting to get where you are within your real estate journey about balancing business and life?
Balancing business and life. The probably what I would advise is what I learned, a long time ago, is the different roles you have in life. Like almost like a Stephen Covey thing. I felt very proud, and my identity still is, or men's identity stereotypically is tied up in their provider-ness, right? I look at me and look at the house, and look at the cars I provide for you, man, or honey, whatever. And I said, and that's great. So there's basically, we all have about 5 roles. So what I started doing is scheduling my life around those 5 roles. My role was, I was a son. Unfortunately, both my parents have now passed. I was a son. I am a husband. I'm a dad. I'm a brother, and I'm a friend. Okay. And so I only have one of those things where, I make a bunch of money in my W-2 job, but if I don't have friends, or I remember a lot of my friends were all their friends were subordinates, and they had no peers. So they're the bosses, and they have no peers. So who mentors you, man? And then I developed a great relationship with my sister. I really worked hard on that. And then I started working hard on my, I take my sister and I take vacations to, like, very short, 1 or 2 nights, but because our parents are gone. And then same thing with my daughter. So I started really purposing those relationships and roles in my life. And my wife kind of bought into that. She's like, well, that's actually kind of cool. You're managing. It's not all me or all kids. You're spending time with your brothers. You're doing whether it's a poker trip or pickleball tournament, good for you. And she started respecting that segmentation of my time. So that's why I would advise people.
Yeah, you always want to invest in your relationships as well. We get really locked in on our business, and we go to the fullest extent with that. We put endless amounts of time, endless amounts of effort into the business, building it up, watching it, monitoring it, making sure everything is going in a positive manner. We need to invest in our relationships as well, because having friends, having family, and giving them the adequate amounts of attention, that's really important as well. So that's a great response to that question. The next question I have for you is, if a person had minimal amounts of time, no money or experience, but they wanted to start and scale a business like yours, what would you recommend for them to do?
Good question. Well, real estate is difficult to acquire without a whole lot of capital. Okay. So the time that they're going to have to spend would be in education with people like you. Okay. So that means they have to spend their windshield time or their flight time downloading those podcasts and understanding what they're comfortable in. And this is key. It's kind of like when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Okay. What I mean by that is one of my good buddies was a swimmer. He's like, Michael, you got to swim. And I barely can swim back from the diving board. Okay. I am not a good swimmer. If you say go swim, a mile, that'd take me a year. It sounds horrible to me. But so you got to find what you like. Okay. So some of you will be like, all right, these are the umpteen different ways I can invest in real estate, but I really, really resonate with this or that or whatever. It's got to be according to your personality. So you can't be like Eric or be like Mike or be your own version of the best self, and then find out what that is. And then reverse engineer that. Do you need to work on your credit? Do you need to take a loan from your 401k? Do you need a joint venture partner? Do you want to do the Airbnb business? Do you want to do the arbitrage Airbnb? Do you want to wholesale? How about this? How about with whatever limited time you work for a wholesaler? You work for an Airbnb host, whatever it may be. Is find out what that is and make sure it's congruent with your personality. So don't try to be a Tony Robbins. You're not Tony Robbins. Be the best version of yourself and make sure it's congruent and be authentic.
Michael, the last question I have for you is, what is the greatest coaching advice you could give to a new person about knowing their numbers? And when I'm saying knowing their numbers, I'm referring to KPIs, taxes, income, expenses, things pertaining to business finance. What kind of advice would you give about knowing your numbers?
As far as knowing your numbers, I did mention that in the answer to the first question, but here's the answer to that is finding, being very transparent with the people that you meet or the seminars that you go to or the clubs that you attend or whatever, however it may be, and then finding someone who's where you want to be or close. I did that multiple times. I never finished college. Used to be embarrassed of that. And I'm like, neither did Michael Dell. So find someone where you're at, okay, and come up to them, put your ego in your back pocket, right, and say, you know what, man, I really like what you had to say. I'd love to take you out to lunch. I want to buy you a cup of coffee. I want to buy you a cocktail. and you sit down and in a one-on-one environment. I mean, these scenarios are great. You're hearing us, our audio files somewhere, wherever you're driving or listening to this, but and then take them out to lunch and then go from there, because your market where you're at might be different than anything else, right? So knowing those numbers from a mentor who's already been down that path, that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, those relationships, they're extremely valuable to learn from a person that's already successful and to model them. And you can't be 100% exactly who they are, but you can learn a lot. Similar to what Tony Robbins says, he says success leaves clues, and it's a true statement. That's why books are in place. That's why we have audio books. We have the written copies, and we can download a lot of information by following thoughts and insights and experiences from others that's gone before us and have done things that we're looking to attempt to do. So that's a great response. And those are great answers to each one of those questions. Before we let you go, if you could share a great personal development book or either a great business book with the Moonlight audience.
Sure. Well, number one is my book on Amazon. It's called Retire on Rent. It's very expensive. I think it's $15. Yes, that'd be great. Or email me. I'll send you a free copy. But so go to Amazon, dial up Retire on Rent Revised. And then I have to go to James Clear and his Atomic Habits. I know it's, I'm probably not the first one of your guests that has said it. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your processes and your systems. And I say that all the time in our 10X meetings. So, having those habits, whatever they may be, like I said, in relationships or your business, things like that. That's really, I really appreciate those things. And also I will say this is, if everything was all about just the information, the joke we used to say in speaking is all the librarians would be millionaires with great sex lives. Okay. It's not just about information. You got to do it. You got to get up and swing. I'd rather have you swing and fail than not swing. Right. So get up and swing. Give me a call if I resonate with you or whatever it may be, whatever's best for you. Is get up and swing. That's you'll be happier 5 years from now. Tell me where you failed 3 times and succeeded twice, rather than you read more books. Right.
Yeah, perseverance is definitely going to help you so much, and you're going to learn so much along the way. And I look at a lot of the things that I failed at in the past, and those are now knowledge bases that I can lean back towards and look back on and leverage in today's environment and within my business as of today. So, Michael, great recommendation and great suggestions on the 2 business books or personal development books. Michael, we want to thank you for coming on to the show. You've been a wealth of knowledge. We appreciate you sharing your early beginnings and how you were able to get things off the ground. It was absolutely amazing. And the achievement that you was able to attain. If someone wanted to connect with you, do you have a preferred method?
Sure. Just go to our website. It's realestatedoneforyou.com, and that's real-estate done, and then the number 4 and the letter U.com. Schedule a strategy session, and you can get a hold of me on there, and just schedule a talk. Leave your checkbook at home, like I say, and just find out what your goals are. And I really do enjoy kind of the challenge of kind of reverse engineering that. I had a client come up to me one time and says, I'm behind, man. I got divorced. I'm behind and I need to catch up. I go, this is what I got to work with. This is what I'm doing. What do you recommend? I'm like, let's put our hat backwards and let's figure this out. It's a math problem. It's not that hard. And then, so give me a call and let's figure it out together.
Okay. Well, sounds good. And once again, thanks for coming on to the show, and we appreciate your time. We'd love to have you back anytime.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Take care.
With him.